Yeah.
No.
We'll go ahead and begin. We'd like to thank each and every one of you for coming out to today's agenda meeting. Recognizing that this is an agenda meeting and we're not live, but this will be aired somewhat tape delayed. We just completed 4 days of the eclipse, solar eclipse, and the town remains full here on this Tuesday evening. People are up and down Central Avenue, and I think everybody had a wonderful time. And downtown Central Avenue looked like a parking lot on Saturday and Sunday. And yesterday, from 3 o'clock to 3 p.m. to about 7 p.m., it looked like one-way traffic going south. Nobody was going north. If you want to go north, the roads were clear. If you want to go south, it took you a while to get through downtown. But with that, a successful weekend. We're going to begin with a review of those action items that will be formally addressed next Tuesday evening, April 16th already. Next Tuesday evening at 6 p.m. I'll call upon our city manager, Mr. Burrow, for those action items.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Your first item is consider Resolution R2469, a resolution acknowledging receipt to the City of Hot Springs financial statements for February 2024, and our Finance Director, Karen Scott, will present.
Good afternoon. As you know, the monthly financial statements are issued to keep city management and constituents apprised of the financial condition of the City of Hot Springs. The February 2024 financial statements will be linked to your board action request, and staff recommends acknowledging receipt of the February 2024 financial statements.
Any questions of Ms. Scott? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have consider Resolution R2470, a resolution awarding a term contract to Clowers Enterprises, Inc., doing business as Advanced Pest Control for certain pest control service, and our Public Works Director, Ron Seabright, will discuss the item.
Good afternoon. The city received 5 proposals from different vendors. Select group from different departments that would be affected by this contract evaluated these proposals and chose Advanced Pest Control as the number one. Overall, we had an overall increase over 23 by about 14.9%.
Director Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. Is this who the current contract is with?
Yes, ma'am.
So it's a renewal?
No, ma'am. It went out to bid.
Oh, but, I mean, it went out.
They were awarded the bid again, yes.
Thank you.
How many respondents did you have?
5.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we ask that you consider Resolution R2471, a resolution awarding a term contract to McGeorge Contracting Company, Inc., doing business as Cranford Construction Company for street paving and code milling, and our Assistant Engineer, City Engineer, Mike Hill, will present.
McGeorge Contracting, doing business as Cranford Construction Company, gave a bid to our 24 paving program. They submitted the only response that we got back. We recommend awarding the term contract to Cranford Construction Company for the cold milling and installing the hot mix asphalt. The notice of intent and award has been published and no protests have been filed. The price for such goods and services has continued to increase, and the contractor cites rock prices as the main contributor to the rise this year. The term contract presented for the supply of street paving and cold milling is in the amount not to exceed budgetary constraints and may be renewed for 4 12-month extensions upon board approval through the annual budgeting process.
Any questions of Mike? Director Beard?
Thank you, Mayor. Is this a renewal, or these are the same people that were paving the streets last year?
It's the same people, but it's not a renewal. We put it out for bids, and they're the only ones that submitted a price.
Are these the same people that paved the highways?
That was not our job, but they are the same ones that did the highways in Hot Springs. Yes, Cranford Construction.
How do we run in or avoid a problem of them starting a project and not being able to finish because they have another job, like paving highways?
Right. More than likely, they'll get started again this year, and then they will leave again. I talked to Guy Washburn, the runner of Cranford, And he pretty much told me this morning, we use the city's work to fill in between RDOT jobs. He said that's just the way RDOT jobs are the big job, and that's the one they're going to go do, and then they will use us to fill in between them. They are trying to bring in another paving group that could give us more time. They have five paving groups right now. They're trying to get a sixth crew. If they are managed to get that sixth crew, we should get more paving, but they're having a hard time finding employees. We had this discussion with them about we need paving quicker.
So
Mike?
oh, go ahead.
Now, I mean, we're having this discussion with them, and
Okay.
and he's just telling us this is the way it works.
Yeah.
So there are other paving construction people that they subcontract out, or?
The other local one is Spa Paving.
Mhm.
They got all the Garland County paving this year, but they cannot do any milling, and we need milling in the city in order to retain, the drainage. We can't just keep paving using Spa and just go over top everything. We have to mill and make sure we keep those flow lines working. And Cranford's the only one putting in for it. And probably has something to do with they have the plants in Hot Springs. So someone comes in, they're either going to have to truck their asphalt out of Little Rock, which the whole time the truck's cooling, or they have to buy from Cranford, and Cranford's the one supplying it, so they can charge them anything they want.
I'll add a couple of things. We anticipated paving between 26 and 28 miles in 2024. Looks like it's going to be about 21 and a half, based on the current prices that we received. We do have a date specific in this particular contractor in this bid, and I think it was December 31st, trying to
December
make sure they
31st.
get done by the end of the year without any type of penalty. And we didn't call it a penalty. Mike, you want to address that?
We did put something in our contract this year that if they didn't get done by the end of the year, they would give us a discount, a 5% discount on the in-place asphalt. That was the simplest way we could come up with, not trying to keep up with working days. And we can't exactly do the same penalties as RDOT does, because theirs is based on lane use mileage, and the way our job's set up, we really can't calculate that. So this was just a simple way to put some kind of penalty, if you want to call it, or reduction in cost to us if they're late. Now, we talked to Guy about this. He has contacted 3 subcontractors that he plans on using to get some of our work done. He believes that he will finish everything before December 31st. His plan is to finish everything before December 31st. It may not be with his crews. He may bring in subcontractors to do a lot of the work.
One of the things we need to do is make sure that our milling schedule and our paving schedule are consistent, so we don't have a street that's milled and stays that way for 3 or 4 weeks. It's hard, but we've got to pay really close attention to that, knowing that they may pull off to another. Our prices did go up considerably from the prior year. I will say that Cranford also bid on the county's work. They submitted a higher cost in the county than they did for the city, but the county was able to move over, and I think it was Spa that they ended up going with as a
Spa, yes.
subcontractor. And to that point, the county doesn't have curb and gutters, so they can just come in and do overlays there, where we have to have that milling to be able to take care of our curb, gutter, and stormwater.
And city streets being we have so many streets coming in, and we try to get those butt joints milled. It's harder for them to do city streets, so typically that's a higher price per ton than if you're out in the county. You just got a straight shot and very few roads coming in.
Mike, do you remember what that cost per mile was? I know we calculated that.
For what Spa did? Or?
No, for Hot Springs, under this
Oh,
contract.
per mile? Yes. We're coming up with about $328,828
For 1 mile.
for a 24-foot roadway.
Yeah.
A lot of our streets aren't 24 foot, but if it was 24 foot, that would what we'd get per mile.
Director Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. Mike, you were sharing with us that Cranford did expect to have everything done by December 31st of this year. Was that including what's left of 23 as well?
23,
We're pretty
Depending on
close
what
to
the-
23,
yeah.
but would that include what's left of 23
yes,
plus
yes.
24?
We
too?
have Whittington and three 3 other streets left and 2 parking lots left on the 23 bidding. They're anticipating being done with that in a few weeks. Yes, the 24, he's talking, starting the 24 as soon as he's done until he pulls off to go to do RDOT. But with the 3 subcontractors he has lined up, he thinks he can get the paving done before December 31st.
Thank you.
Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. With the additional funding that the city has for now in the next few years and the county, it appears it would be very beneficial to have that extra crew if they could find the employees. Is this something that workforce development can assist in helping them obtain the necessary employees they need to
I'm
train
not
for that?
I'm not sure how he's going about finding his employees. He says he is having trouble finding people who can pass the drug test and for people who will show up. They'll go through all this procedures and then they don't show up for work. And so it's just hard to keep a crew working because it takes time to train someone and they work together. So you keep throwing new people in there, it's hard to get a crew started.
I understand that. It needs to be a mix of experience
He's-
and
he-
trainees.
And he also expressed, he says, I have a concern trying to put 6 crews together, because he says, when the city's money runs out or has to come up for renewal again, the percent sales tax, and there's some more RDOT money, that's federal money, that's gonna run out about the same time, whether or not that gets reappropriated. He says, I may have 6 crews and don't have work for 3 crews. He says he's concerned about taking on the responsibility of those families, because here in, 2028, when things may or may not get re-upped, he says that's a lot of concern he has to keep those guys working.
So that's, 3 more years at least? And with the internship program, there are tax credits available for companies doing that. So if there's...
We can mention it to him. I'm not sure where he
I don't know if
goes.
our Metro Partnership work with the workforce development would be able to assist in that, but...
We'll certainly check. That paving is so specific, it's not like, say, a welder
I
that they
understand.
could go several places, but we could certainly follow up on that.
Sure.
Any additional questions of Mike? Thank you.
Next, we have considered Resolution R-2472, a resolution authorizing a contract with Hanson and McLaughlin LLC for certain professional engineering, design, and construction management services for the 2024 and 2025 water line improvement projects. This would be in the amount estimated to be about $240,000, and our project manager, Todd Pillar, will present.
Thank you and good afternoon. This is for engineering only, no construction. We want to get our 24 and 25 water lines engineered and sent off to the health department for approval, so they're shelf ready. By the time this process goes through engineering and getting ADH approval, it'll probably be sometime in July or whatever. And our 2 big, huge contractors working out on our finished water lines, Diamond and K-Jax, will almost be done. So we'll know those projects are about ready to close out. There's 13 streets, and we've worked with Mike and James and those folks, Gary, on the paving program, and we have 3 streets that we have listed first, so we can get those utilities moved and fire hydrants put in before they pave it. And the engineering for this will come out of the 2024 water distribution budget that the board approved.
Any questions of the board? For Todd? No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, consider Resolution R-2473, a resolution approving the purchase of a Vermeer vacuum excavator trailer from Vermeer Mid-South, Inc., pursuant to the Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Program in the amount of $129,751.41, and our Utilities Director, Monty Ledbetter, will discuss the item.
Thank you, Bill. Good afternoon, everyone. This Vermeer hydro excavation trailer will be used in our water distribution division. Comes in very handy because it's a bumper pulled, so we can pull it with our 3/4 ton trucks, and we can get into some tight spots that we can't get with our hydro excavation trailer. Of course, it's a lot smaller, so we can use this in our valve exercising program where we clean out our valve boxes. A lot of debris gets down in those valve boxes that are in the street, and we have to be able to get on those in an emergency. So we have a crew, a 3-man crew that goes around and exercises valves and cleans out the valve boxes and straightens them. Sometimes they get a little crooked. This is some of the things that we can do. We can also hydro excavate around electrical lines, gas mains, and other utilities, and it makes the cleanup easy because it's a hydro excavator. So it all goes into a debris body, and we can tow it and dump it where we dump our debris at. So the cost of this was $118,494.44 plus tax. This was budgeted in our 2024 CIP funds.
Any questions, Amani? Hearing none, thank you.
Ready?
Monty, stick around. I think you've got the next several. Consider Resolution R 2474, a resolution approving the purchase of a Caterpillar wheel loader from J.A. Riggs Tractor Company, doing business as Riggs Cat, pursuant to the Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Program, in the amount of $235,595. Monty?
All righty. This front end loader will be used at our compost facility. It'll be replacing an older unit that's a 1996 Caterpillar front end loader, and it's really wore out. So it's time for that to go. The funds for this were budgeted in 2024, and the cost is $235,595.
Any questions, Amani, on this item? Thank you.
Next, we have considered Resolution R 2475, a resolution approving the purchase of a Vector Impact Combination Sewer Cleaner Truck from Vector Manufacturing, offered through the Environmental Products Group Incorporated, pursuant to the Sourcewell's Cooperative Purchasing Program. This is in the amount of $349,950.89. Monty?
Okay, this will be used in our wastewater collection department. You've seen this kind of truck running around town. This is our cleaning truck that cleans the inside of the sewer mains out. There's a lot of debris that gets into those mains, and it has to be cleaned out. We don't just flush it downstream. We vacuum it out, clean it out, and haul it to a location where we can dump that, and all that wastewater that comes out of there goes back to our sewer treatment facility. This truck is also used as a hydro excavation truck. It can be used that way as well, which is really a big safety issue around our crews and digging around all the utilities that we have to dig around. This truck, we're going to keep our old truck because it's a 2015 model, but it's still got some use to it. It's got 6,979 hours on it, which is a lot of hours, but we use this truck every single day, and it's starting to show signs. And in anything you do in the wastewater department area in this division, there's a lot of maintenance that goes on to these trucks. So, and when we're down, we really can't afford to be down without a truck for any time at all. We have to have a backup. So I want to keep the old truck as a backup and put the new one in on the front line. The cost of this truck's $349,950.89, and we did budget for it in our CIP funds this year.
Any questions, Amani, on this resolution? Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. Is this equipment used out where there's work done around the grinder pumps, or is that something different?
We have one for the grinder trucks, the pump stations that are real similar. You approved the purchase of that 2 years ago, and this is a little bit, it's similar truck to that, but this one has a big rod on the front, big wheel that we can jet up into and put high pressure, like a car wash basically. We can clean the interior lines out, and then that pulls all that debris back to the manhole that we're working at, and lifts it out, sucks it out. So it's a little bit different truck than that one, but they look real similar when they're
Okay.
running around.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any additional questions on this? Thank you.
Next, consider Resolution R-2476, a resolution awarding a term contract to Arkansas Lime Company for hydrated lime for use in the city's water treatment plants. Monty?
All righty. This is lime, of course, we use to raise our pH at our water treatment plants. This is a term contract. It's with Arkansas Lime Company, which we've done business with for years. They were the low bidder. We had two bidders that bid on it, and Arkansas Batesville Lime was the lowest one. This, not a lot to say about lime, so I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it. It's kind of boring. So we do spend about $25,000 a year on lime, so.
Any questions, Director Beard?
Thank you, Mayor. What is the purpose of the lime again?
We use it to raise the pH in our drinking water. So we use it at our water treatment plants, both of our treatment plants.
Okay, so then my question is about, you've heard of the Forever Chemical, the PFAS. Is there, what's being done?
PFAS, mhm.
Yes, thank you. What's being done to protect our drinking water from that?
Well, that is a great question. That usually comes from our source water, and we're very fortunate here in Hot Springs to have a very good water source, Lake Ouachita. We've tested Lake Ouachita, and we've had no concerns whatsoever with the PFAS results that we've seen from that. We've also tested our Lake Ricks, where we get our water supply for our lakeside plant now. We've tested that, and no concerns there either. So we're in pretty good shape as far as it comes to the PFAS. I don't think we're going to have that issue like a lot of other facilities are going to have to deal with, even in Arkansas. So we're very blessed to have and being located where we're at.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. Great question. Thank
Any
you.
additional questions? Thank you.
Next, consider Resolution R-2477, a resolution awarding a term contract to PVS DX Inc. for sodium hypochlorite for use in the city's water treatment plants. Monty?
Okay, this is also used at our water treatment plants, and sodium hypochlorite is just a fancy word for bleach. So we use quite a bit of that. We use around $100,000 worth of this a year. It's a little bit stronger than the bleach that you buy at Walmart. I think the Walmart bleach is maybe 3%. This is around 13% when it gets to us. So we use quite a bit of that, but we order it that way, so it comes in that way. We don't have to hold as much of it. So we can. That's what our treatment plants are set up to use, and it's the best available thing out there and the most reasonable cost thing out there. We did have 3 bidders on this. This company, PVS, is the same company that we used last year. They were bought out by PVS. Bought this the company out last year that we used was DPC, but it's the same company and same facility out of Houston, Texas. Questions?
Any questions of Mike, or excuse me, Monty? Thank you.
One more.
And consider Resolution R-2478, a resolution awarding a term contract to Core and Main LP for certain fire hydrants and kits. Again, Mr. Ledbetter.
All right. The fire hydrants you see around located in the city of Hot Springs are, you'll see 2 different types of fire hydrants. You'll see Clows and you'll see Mueller hydrants. And this year, Clow didn't submit a bid, so we had 1 bid, and it's Mueller, and it's in our specifications that we can use them. So this particular year will be Mueller. If we need any Clow parts, we'll put those out for bid as we need them, if we need them. But and these terms are for 5 consecutive terms, so total of 6 years upon mutual consent. But if the price changes, of course, we'll come back to you guys if there's any large price changing, but we don't anticipate that at all. that's already happened, so.
Any questions, Amani, on this resolution? Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. Was there any indication why the other vendor did not bid, or there was only one?
There's two different fire hydrants that we allow, and Cloud just selected not to send in a bid this year. I don't know if
They
it
didn't
was
provide any.
availability and other contracts. I'm not real sure. They didn't indicate why. But Mueller is a good fire hydrant, so we're happy with the fact we got one of the two. So I'm sure next year, or whenever this is due again, I'm sure that Cloud will probably be submitting. They may be just behind on their inventory.
Thank you.
It's hard to get metal these days.
Yes, yeah.
to
I
build
wondered if
hydrants
there
with.
was a supply chain issue.
Any additional questions? Thank you.
Next item is the first under your new business for next Tuesday. It's consider Resolution R-2479, a resolution acknowledging the 2024 Pleasant Street National Register Historic District Historic Resources Survey Report prepared by the Post Oak Preservation Solutions, LLC, and our Planning and Development Director, Kathy Selman, will discuss the item.
Thank you. Good afternoon. The Pleasant Street National Register Historic District Resurvey Historic Resources Survey Report was funded in full through a certified local governments grant awarded by the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program. The survey will assist the Board of Directors and their Historic District Commission in determining specific actions to maintain and improve the Pleasant Street Historic District through both private and public investment. Pleasant Street Historic District is southeast of downtown. It's bounded by Church Street to the north, Grand Avenue to the south. Laurel, Mound, and Daisy Streets form the eastern boundary, and Malvern Avenue is the western boundary. This is both a local ordinance historic district and a listed National Register historic place, and the boundaries of the two districts are identical. All properties within the Pleasant Street Historic District are subject to local regulations concerning construction, demolition, or alteration to any structure in the district. A historic resources survey documents all properties regardless of historic status within certain geography. The survey includes exterior photographs, site plans, and limited research into each resource's history. The Historic District Commission uses the survey results when evaluating certificates of approval or appropriateness. The Arkansas Historic Preservation Program uses the survey to determine which buildings are considered contributing to a historic district, and only contributing structures are eligible for state and federal financial incentives. But the Historic District Commission reviews changes to all buildings to protect the historic character of the district. Post Oak Preservation Solutions completed all their field work in October and presented their methodology to the Historic District Commission on October 19th of 2023. All property owners within the district were notified and invited to attend that meeting, as well as they were invited to attend a subsequent March 2024 Historic District Commission meeting. There were recommendations that came from the study. The 2023-24 resurvey revealed that the neighborhood is facing ongoing pressure from development, from deterioration, and from demolition. Although the district currently retains a majority, and that's 59.4%, of contributing resources, the margin is narrow. Nevertheless, the district retains a good overall integrity of setting and is still able to convey its historical significance. Amendment of the National Register nomination, expansion of the period of significance, by which they're talking about the original survey that was done to establish the district, was only able to consider buildings built 1950 and before. Because of the time that has gone by since then, we are now able to consider buildings that were constructed up to 1974, which really is a great thing for this particular district. The reevaluation of current resources within the district and potential additional survey of adjacent properties are recommended to strengthen the district and to ensure its longevity. As the largest district in Arkansas associated with Black history, the Pleasant Street Historic District is a unique and invaluable resource to the city of Hot Springs and to Arkansas as a whole. A reminder that accepting this plan, this survey, commits no funding for individual survey and recommendation components, and the recommended reevaluation of the expanded district from 1950 to 1974 is an activity that would be eligible for grant funding from the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program. Hot Springs Historic District Commission at their duly advertised regular monthly meeting on March 21st, 2024, considered the new survey, considered testimony, which was all supportive of the survey results, especially regarding a recommendation to consider Goldstein School, which is adjacent to the current boundary, as something that would be valuable to add to the district. They also considered the record, and by their unanimous 4-0 vote, approved the Pleasant Street National Register Historic District Survey report, and recommend that you adopt a resolution accepting the report.
Any questions of Ms. Selman? Director Garcia?
Thank you. In our packet, will you include information about Goldstein School? Is it empty, or is it being used for anything or any future purpose?
That information is contained within the report.
Great. And how this will can help us to prevent future condemnations in this area. We want to preserve those buildings, and there's been a lot of times it's not brought to our attention till it's crumbling down, and we want to preserve this historic area prior to it being ready to fall in, and having
absolutely.
to come and ask for condemnation, and how that will help prevent that from happening.
Yeah, I think that those of you who have seen, as probably all of you, have seen the previous surveys. I think you'll find that the format of this survey is a lot more accessible.
User-friendly?
Yeah, way more
Okay.
user-friendly. And
That's good.
And we're delighted at that. I think the accessibility of this survey report makes it far more likely that more people will venture into it and gain the understanding of what this district brings to Hot Springs.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Director Dobbs-Smith?
Would the new survey, now that you're expanding the length of time, would that be able to add structures that had previous major alterations that previously excluded them from being included?
Yeah, that you sound like you've read the report. I think one of the things that is so good about this particular firm that did the report is, and I'll read you an example. They were talking about a specific home that was built around 1904, was the home of a prominent local doctor and later a Green Book site. And we have a lot of Green Book locations in Hot Springs and in this district, in and around. Likely considered non-contributing due to alterations, the structure is primarily significant to the district due to its function as safe lodging for Black travelers rather than its architecture. And in this case, Post Oak is recommending that its status be changed to contributing. They noted that several structures appear to have been labeled non-contributing due to changes such as installation of vinyl siding or alterations to porches, but they were also listed for their significance to the ethnic history of the neighborhood and their contributing status, I love this, should not wholly rest on architectural integrity. And I think that previous folks who did survey were focused more on that architectural element of the district rather than delving into the social contributions from that area.
Thank you.
That was a great question.
Any additional great questions? I'm sorry, I'm not downplaying it, I'm just, Director Beard had a great question on, to Monty. We'll keep it rolling. Any further? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have your first ordinance of the evening. It's considered ordinance O-2415, an ordinance approving an exclusive franchise agreement with Flossie's Funnel Cakes, Inc. to provide food concession operations at Kimmery Park. And our sports rec director, Adam.
Good evening. The Kimmery Park concessions provide a variety of food and drink options for spectators, players, coaches, umpires, and staff. The City of Hot Springs solicited requests for proposals for Kimmery Park food concessions operations rights. Flossie's Funnel Cakes, Inc. submitted the only proposal. City staff conducted an evaluation and rating process for the selection of the food concessionaire to operate the Kimmery concession booth and recommends granting an exclusive franchise to Flossie's to allow the company to operate food concessions at all leagues, events, and tournaments at Kimmery Park. A notice of intent to award was published and no protests were filed.
Any questions on, yes, Director Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. So when you're saying that Flossie's Funnel Cakes would provide food concession operations, would that mean that they would bring their food truck there, or are they going to operate inside of the concession stand that's being renovated at current time?
So they operate inside of the concession stand. We do give them the option to bring their food truck on site for some of our bigger events and tournaments, and they have done that in the past.
So the products that are going to be sold are going to be specifically from Flossie's, or would there be additional concession items too?
There is additional concession items, yeah. So in the past, our menu has been, the basic ballpark foods of hot dogs, nachos, popcorn, all drinks, and then they do their slushies as well. But with the new renovations inside the concession stand, they now have the option to do hamburgers and some other things on the grill in there.
In times past, have we gotten volunteers to run that?
No, Flossie's has had it.
Flossie's has had it too in times
Yeah.
past?
Well,
And-
now, in times past, we had that in-house, and very difficult to keep anybody working in there. Most of it was part-time or seasonal, and just had a hard time staffing it. Then the food cost and the other labor costs that went into that, we were barely breaking even sometimes we wouldn't even cover our cost at the end of the year. We entertained Flossie's originally to see how that would go, and I think now we end up getting about 20% of the gross revenue that they have. We don't have any cost for supplying, buying the food or any of or any of the other things that they sell. So it's worked out really well for us since we brought them in, or any other concessionaire, to be able to know that we're going to experience profits versus taking that risk of, one, not being able to staff it, and two, being able to turn a profit.
Will those financial breakdowns be included in our packet as well?
Yes, I can include
Coming
those. I
out.
have those right offhand. If you want the last 3 years, we've had the 20% that we received. It was in 2021, we received $11,165 from Flossie's. In 2022, we received $9,279. And a note on that year that there was no games from January to March because of the turf installation, so no leagues or tournaments were going on. And then last year, they turned over $12,362 in the gross profit return.
And that's versus being out of pocket
Yes.
to pay for staff and to pay for food and cleanup, et cetera. Thank you. On the concession stand itself, this is probably unrelated specifically to Flossie's, but I do want to request like an expenditure report as to where we are with the construction and renovation. Can I have that maybe
we
as a
get that to you.
separate?
We sent
Maybe
that
the
to
other
you.
board members might like to see that too, kind of.
It's coming along very well.
Yeah, what items have been addressed so far with the concession stand? How much money from that $292,000 appropriation has been spent? And then what's left? And then how that breaks down with what money still remain from the appropriated funds?
We sure can do that.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Oh, we got a couple. Director
A
Dobbs
very
Smith. You got a great one?
excellent question.
Come on,
An
bring it
excellent,
on.
Great question. How are the utilities covered in this?
Great question.
In terms of the, so they fall back on us for utilities used, and we do have that budgeted line item.
Is there a separate utility meter to the concession
No,
stand?
it's all in the same
Yeah,
meter.
so your lights and everything are all together?
Yep, it's all in the same building, so it's all in the same meter.
Thank you.
Director Beard, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Maybe you explained this, but you put out for bid for additional, like food trucks to sell food during the games. Is this while the concession stand is under construction? Like, maybe you explained it, I didn't.
No, ma'am,
understand.
so this is, they would be operating the concession stand, so that's what this is for.
Inside of the concession
Yes,
stand?
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
No, I think the question was earlier, you said that Flossie's would bring their food truck
Yes.
in as a supplemental service site.
Correct, yeah.
And so they would have the concession stand and the food truck all under Flossie's.
Yes,
in order to
correct.
better serve the visitors and the guests and the ball players.
Yeah, because they have items inside of their food truck that they don't normally do inside of the concession stand, so they expand it a little bit and bring the food truck in as well, in addition to the concession stand area.
Okay.
But it's all under the
Yes.
the
all of
original
the Flossie's.
agreement.
Yes, correct.
And so they were the only one that bid on to do this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Director Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. And this, I presume, is falling under the umbrella of softball tournaments. Would there be any other amenities that Flossie's would provide concession services to?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
If it's at
It's
Kimry?
under tournaments and events, so
Okay.
anything that goes on out there that we're made aware of, then they
Okay.
could be on site for.
Thank you.
Yep.
Very good.
That could include soccer,
Oh, yeah.
tennis.
Mhm.
Okay.
Pickleball?
Pickleball.
Great point, Mayor.
Thank you. We're all being very generous in compliments today. Next item, or any further on this? Next item?
Adam, you were almost Whittington there for a second. It about came out before I could get Ussery out of my mouth. Next item is consider ordinance O-2416, an ordinance providing for a monthly stipend and annual allowance for technology and communication for the City of Hot Springs Board of Directors, amending the 2024 budget and for other purposes. And I believe our city attorney is going to handle this item.
Give it a shot. Thank you, Bill. Mayor, members of the board, this is an item that we've been discussing off and on for a little while. Wanted to just once again, kind of at the backdrop of what has happened in the past, want to remind the board that our city manager form of government was approved April the 8th of 1986. That was 4,018 votes for, 2,663 votes against. At that time, Arkansas Code annotated Section 1447-114A, which controls the city manager form of government, stated that a director of the city shall not receive any compensation for his services. Furthermore, another provision in a different chapter of Title 14 dealing with city manager forms of government, 14-61-110, provides neither a director or the mayor of the city shall receive any compensation for his services unless authorized by the voters of the city at a special or general election. Following such authorization, the Board of Directors by ordinance shall set such compensation pursuant to the provisions of Arkansas Constitution Amendment 56, as may be amended, provided that no ordinance setting compensation shall contain an emergency clause. So with that backdrop, I want to state that the section I just read, 1461-110, was enacted in 1989. That was Act 907 of 1989. In 1991, Act 1012 stated the following. The board, this was an amendment to the 1447-114, which now provides the Board of Directors of any city with the city manager form of government may, by ordinance, provide for the compensation of board members. So, again, 1461-10 was enacted in 1989. 1447-114 as amended was 1991. So the pivotal question is whether or not the 1991 Act repealed the requirement of an election under the 1989 Act. We can talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So if 1012 of 1991 repealed the election requirement of 907 of 1989, then the 2002 election that the city had on the compensation issue would not have been a prerequisite. But we did have an election, and that election failed. That was 39% was in favor, 61% was against. So the question is whether or not that was actually required or not. We have talked about proposed monthly stipends and what the allowance for technology and communication might be. Those have kind of been scattered about, but somewhere in the neighborhood of $750 to $850. The quorum court members currently get $862.20 per month as their stipend. The annual lump sum technology communication allowance has been suggested at $1,500 per year, and we would need to amend our current code provisions regarding travel expenses accordingly. It looks as though sections 2 and 3 of Hot Springs Code 2-1-5 would be the ones that we would be looking at. That involves in-state travel and local travel cost. Before we talk about the amounts, because I need some guidance there, also need to decide whether or not you want this as part of a budget amendment or whether or not you want this to come out of your existing reserve. There is a reserve of approximately $100,000 that could be utilized for this purpose. You would fall well within that range, obviously, and would not require an adjustment to the budget. This action by the board, like many actions of the board, could be subject to a referendum. I want to make you aware of that, and that one of the ways that you could really kind of belt and suspenders, if you will, approach could be for us to seek what's called a declaratory judgment. If you would want me to initiate a declaratory act, and essentially what that is getting pre-approval of a court, essentially, that this is permitted without the necessity of an election. I feel pretty certain that the election is not required, but I want you to know that anyone can argue anything, sometimes even successfully.
The 2002 vote, obviously this was reviewed by legal counsel in 2002 and came up with the conclusion that the voters should have an opportunity to weigh in.
I've read the bar, Mayor, from 2002. There's not a lot of guidance in there about what prompted it, but certainly there was no mention of Section 4 of Act 1012 of 1991. Section 4 of Act 1012 of 1991 stated that all laws and parts of laws in conflict with this act are hereby repealed. And so the threshold question is, now 1447-114 does not require an election. 1661, 110 does. Well, is that in conflict with the more recent act? I think that it is, but I don't want you to make a decision thinking that this is without the possibility of contesting. Again, anything is capable of being contested, and most of your actions are subject to referendum. So we could take legal action and seek declaratory relief. It's just it's a public notice, and court can make a determination in advance as to whether or not an election is required.
Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. If this were to be approved, I recommend a line item change from the current reserve we have in the board budget to this expense and not increase the budget.
That's what we thought you would say. So,
Director Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, if we were to approve this measure, I would want to follow suit with what Director Garcia just stated, that it does come from the reserve as a line item to not increase our budget. The term that you were using, again, to get a court's decision on that, was that declaratory action?
yes, a declaratory action seeking declaratory relief in the form of a declaratory judgment.
That's a declarative sentence.
Yes, it is.
How does that work? What is the timeline for doing so?
I could file it relatively soon. The history and the facts are not complicated. I could try to get that before a judge by the end of the month.
Thank you.
Director Garcia?
Is the judge declaratory ruling, is that the better path than asking the Attorney General for an opinion?
I would say yes, because the Attorney General's opinion is not precedent. It's not binding on anyone.
Oh, okay.
It's an Attorney General is an attorney giving an opinion, just like I would.
Okay.
It has no effect of
That's
law.
thank you for explaining that. I've always wondered that. Thank you.
We like to quote them because it's a good thing to do, but it's not binding.
Thank you.
Director Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, knee-jerk reaction to me states that the declaratory action definitely provides insurance that what we're doing is moving in the right direction to address this issue. And it does provide a safeguard, a legality safeguard for the city and for the current directors and directors in the future as well. What does it do in terms of your perception of this being a valid ordinance without the declaratory action? And let me restate that this way. If the judge were to say it is okay to allow the stipend, how does that affect us? If the judge were to say it is not okay to allow the stipend, how does that affect us?
I would limit the request to whether or not an election is required for the stipend. If we receive a court order that is not appealed within a timely fashion, which is 30 days to the Arkansas Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court, then that's done. So my confidence at that point would be, 100%.
But if the reverse occurred where the judge said, no, you need to have an election,
Then
we would reconvene and say, hey, do you want to have an election?
yes, sir, or whether you wanted me to appeal.
Appeal.
I will say this: there are no cases. There are no Attorney General opinions on what the import is between 1447, 114, and 1461, 110. Not a single one. And it's kind of baffling, honestly.
How does the municipal league see this?
They have no literature on it. I've talked to Mr. Zimmerman about this. for 25 years. Well, of course, I don't talk to Mr. Zimmerman anymore, but Mr. Zimmerman and Mark Hayes for the last 25 years. And there's, you know, there's not a lot of, there's not any guidance there.
Well, he, excuse me, when Mark Hayes came here last year, he said that we could just write an ordinance and this could happen. So, and I also had another question, or no, I'll ask my question when we're done with this.
Director Garcia?
In your first citation from the 80s, I believe you read he,
Yeah.
not allowed he, so does that mean she's can be compensated?
The majority of the board can receive compensation. No, just kidding.
Well, certainly in the interest of transparency, I think, you know, having a court opinion on it or ruling on it is best. You know, that way, you know, we're being upfront. And
I agree.
so,
Is
is that
it-
a directive to Director Trustee,
Sorry.
Director Beard?
I was gonna ask, are we the only city, the first class with a city manager that does not receive compensation?
I don't know that we're the only one that does, and I know that the city of Little Rock does. Of course, they went through a transformation of their city manager form. They're a strong mayor, city manager form of government, a little different nuance. There's a different statutory provision.
City of Fort Smith,
They're city administrator,
city administrator.
different statute.
Director Trustee?
Thank you, Mayor. Brian, if you filed a motion for the declaratory judgment by the end of the month, would you expect a ruling within a week, 2 weeks, 2 months?
Obviously,
What would you
we would need to do a warning order. This needs to be publicized so that someone wants to engage in the argument, they can. If there is not one, then I'll seek an audience hearing with the judge immediately. If there is anyone who wants to participate in the discussion, that might protract it a little longer. But I would certainly hope that, you know, by midsummer, we would have a decision.
Is this a district court, circuit court?
Circuit court, yes, sir. And again, you know, this is my belt and suspenders talking here. This is a very conservative approach. To me, there is an obvious conflict between the two, but we don't have any cases that say that. And 1461-110 continues to be printed in the book every year. So.
All right. Director Trustee?
Thank you, Mayor. I know you said Attorney General is just an attorney like you are with an opinion, and we tend to put a lot of stock in those opinions, but they're not law.
Right.
So can I ask your opinion on this process, how we should go about it? I know what you said and the cases that you cited, but in your opinion, should there be this declaratory judgment, or should we consider this ordinance tonight?
If I were in private practice answering that question, I would tell you, steam forward. But I'm not.
Okay.
I'm trying to advise you of the most cautious, as the mayor said, transparent process that you can do. And I think this is it.
Okay.
Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. That being said, then, would you advise that this item be removed from the agenda to, if there's a consensus to go forward with the declaratory action, instead of making it contingent on that action and bring it back after that was done? which would you
Yes, ma'am.
recommend?
If the board tells me to proceed on with declaratory action, then I will begin that first thing tomorrow.
And would you postpone this,
Oh,
take this off the
yes.
agenda then?
Yes.
Any other, Director Dobbs-Smith?
What would the timeline look like if we decided we wanted a referendum or needed a referendum? What, like if we said today, or next Tuesday,
Sure.
how long would it take?
So the election laws have changed, obviously, and so
November.
if you wanted to refer this to the people for a vote, I think you'd be looking at the general election.
That's what I was wondering, is do we have enough time if we wanted to get that on the ballot for the general election?
Oh, you could, yes.
Yeah, because they're still taking
And-
signatures.
I'm not a
for
fan of
ballot.
special elections.
And so for example, let's say that the declaratory action ends up being that you need to have the election. You can make the choice to appeal that, or if you want to get it on the general election date, I think we could probably make that timeline. Yeah.
That's an excellent question.
Another excellent question. This group is just.
Do one more, Director Dobbs-Smith, it's a trifecta. Okay, Director Webb.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just going back to the declaratory action, if what we receive is, there isn't any need for an election and this is determined by the judge, that means that this ordinance would reappear. And this is assuming that we all want to move in that direction, which, are we planning on doing that tonight too, to make that determination? No?
As to.
Removing this item to
Yes,
go to the
I
declaratory action?
I think
Okay.
you are considering removing this.
Okay.
Removing it, yeah.
From the draft agenda. It's
Right.
not that formal, and I just want to touch on this real quickly. There are times when we go through this process at the agenda meeting and something happens and something comes off the agenda. I do want to remind the board that the mayor and the city manager are the ones that set the agenda. They do that with your input, which they covet. But the agenda is never approved until the night of the meeting.
Right, okay, thank you. So going back to the question that I was going to ask you, if the judge's ruling on this declaratory action is that the election is warranted, then that means that we have to do an election to make this ordinance a possibility? Or does that just mean that he's suggesting that you need to do an election? Would that be considered law?
Yeah, when those orders and judgments, they're kind of
Okay.
final. But you would need to decide whether or not that you wanted to go with the election, or whether you thought that you had a good enough legal argument to appeal it.
Okay,
And if we appealed it and there was a decision at the higher level, then other cities like us might get some guidance out of the deal. A declaratory action that the city of Hot Springs files in circuit court without action of an appellate court doesn't provide any precedent for any other city.
got you. And then on the flip side of that, if the results from the declaratory action is that you do not need an election to present this ordinance, then we would move on as planned as this ordinance states here, correct? And that's to consider monthly stipends to directors in the tune of $750 per director, $850 for the mayor, plus $1,500 a year stipend, or is that?
None of those figures have been finalized.
Okay.
yet, So we would be back
Okay.
discussing those. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Director Beard, did you have another question?
I was just going to say, Texarkana's watching to see how this works for us.
I believe that, yeah.
All right, anything else to come before the board this
Yes.
evening?
My question was about, did you have a response from the article from the town and country, or town and city and town article that I forwarded about APERS?
Yes. So I don't know how many of you knew this or not, but we are fortunate to have a city employee who is on the Board of Trustees of APERS. Gary Carnahan sits on the Board of Trustees. And so I asked him to inquire of counsel for APERS regarding this issue, and I gave a pretty elaborate request, but essentially what they said was they didn't think that that you would be eligible. However, after we decide how this is going to be funded, to submit it for their consideration, and they would make a ruling at that point. But it did not look likely.
Well, what about, well, they wrote this right here.
Yeah, I read your
So-
article. That's not a city manager form of government.
Okay.
That's a salaried mayor, full-time mayor.
Director Garcia?
For clarification, are we taking item 13 off of the agenda for
Yes.
next week? Okay.
Until we get the decision of the court, and then
Okay.
we'll have some, regardless of what the outcome of that is, we'll have a couple other options, or at least one option or two or three options.
So are we at, just talking about other items? Or what?
Well, this is an agenda
where are we?
meeting, so we've kind of gone through 1 through 13, but did you have something you want to try to
No,
add?
I was trying to figure out where we were.
She was asking about APERS along the lines of the compensation.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Director Trustee?
Thank you, Mayor. Brian, do you need action from us to, no, just advice tonight, action maybe next week for you to pursue?
We're just giving them direction.
No.
And that's all, I mean,
Yeah.
we just,
Right.
that
You-
direction is clear?
If you tell me that you want me to pursue that legal remedy, then I take charge of the litigation.
And we can do that at this meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Please pursue. All right.
agreed.
There'd be no further business, and this is an agenda meeting, but we've gone through the 1 through 13, and we are hereby adjourned.
Thank you, Mayor.